The release of Metallica's Hardwired to Self-Destruct may be more historic than any of us could have imagined. Yeah, not only is it their first proper studio album in 8 years since 2008's Death Magnetic, but this is also the end of a cycle. A cycle that has started with Repentless by Slayer and ended with this album by Metallica, where all 4 members of the Big Four of thrash metal have released an album within a year, or in this case, 14 months of one another. The last time that happened, 1990 to 1991, where albums such as Persistence of Time, Rust in Peace, Seasons in the Abyss, and the Black Album marked the last moment that occurred. It's amazing to think that this has just been the first time in 26 years, knowing all of the different albums that those bands have put out ever since 1991. But it leads to another question: which of these 4 that we've just gotten in this past year is really the best out of them all? And I understand that Metallica's cycle for Hardwired to Self-Destruct just began, and the other 3 have the advantage of potential repeat listens. So we're going to do a little bit of future prediction. But with that being said, let's rank these 4 albums and see who really has taken the crown out of the Big Four between 2015 and 2016. Who had the best album? Let's take a look. Number 4 on this list is Slayer with Repentless. Originally, this was given an 83 out of 100 in the CKN review back in September of 2015, which feels like it's light years away from us. And this is an album that does have some fairly decent ideas. The singles definitely gave us that hyper-aggressive feel that maybe harkened us back to Rain in Blood, or even the moments right around the last time these 4 bands all had an album released. However, they did also possess some experimentation, which was kind of a nice touch. It did give it a little bit of a disheveled feel, and at times, this was an album that felt a little bit more like more of the same output from Slayer that we've gotten since perhaps 2001's God Hates Us All. But overall, not a bad disc. It's just one that, however, was really plagued by the fact that after the initial review cycle and all that, I didn't really feel the need to revisit this all that much, nor did I really have the urge, and that certainly hurt this album quite a bit. This is an 83 initially, that right now, if I were to re-review it, would probably be downgraded to an 81, or potentially just a flat 80. Number 3 is Metallica with Hardwired to Self-Destruct, the album that just was released. It was given an 83, and once again, whenever we predict the future, this is an album that throughout the 5 to 7 listens that this one got during the review cycle, it always seemed to really return back to a score such as an 83. This was just sort of the aggregate average that you could take for this, and it really didn't go any higher than an 85. This is a disc that has a lot of pretty solid ideas, blending some of that load to reload era, complacency alongside of Death Magnetic's frantic touch, while also splicing in some touches of the 80s and some brand new identity with some new wave of British heavy metal or just plain old hard rock thrown in there as well with some of the songs that you get off of this disc, including a pretty cool cover to Lemmy that doesn't sound like a Motorhead song whatsoever. Perhaps it's how a tribute really should be done, hard to really say. And Spit Out the Bone, not to mention, is a fantastic finisher. However, this is an album that I can see really hovering within that same range. If it goes any lower, it may only touch 82 to a high 81, and the highest it could potentially manifest is an 85. Already, this is a disc that I've given about 9 spins in total, and my conclusions have always been right around this same area. Number 2 is Megadeth with the album Dystopia. Whether you want to believe this or not, this got an 82 out of 100 whenever it was reviewed earlier this year, but the year was still relatively new. This was the first big release that really got touched, and it's one that there was no real baseline. So based off of that, any subsequent listen that this album was able to receive throughout this year was probably going to help it out, and it actually really did. Dystopia is an album that's marked by its frantic change of pace, definitely one that was aiming to supersede its predecessor, which was Super Collider, and not exactly that hard to do. And based off of that, it's an album that's filled with a lot of reinvigoration, and plus, it introduced the world to a Megadeth that included Chris Adler, and also featured Kiko from Angra, which is definitely a supergroup style lineup, which is pretty darn fantastic. And this is also a disc that, for some, was not a grower, but for others certainly was. For me, it was a little bit of a grower. As I continued to listen to this album throughout this year, 82 just felt like it was almost insulting in a way. And this is an album that ever since has been bumped up to an 85. It didn't make the halfway point top 15 list, but I can almost guarantee it will probably make the top 50 list at the end of the year. It will definitely make a top 100 if it comes to that. And the winner is obvious, based around the three that we've already mentioned, and that's For All Kings by Anthrax. Something about this album just continuously causes me to want to go back to it. It was one that during the review cycle prompted me to listen to it 7, 8, 9 times. I had to tear myself away from this album in order to perpetuate and actually film the review. And that's the marking of a pretty strong release. Anthrax has had some really strong material in their most recent memory, and this is just following up on that. It's very reminiscent to what Testament has been able to do ever since they've become full force once again. And really, if you want the honest-to-God truth, Brotherhood of the Snake probably supersedes all 4 of these albums. However, with the Anthrax album, the power is based around its pacing. It's based around the idea that they use every element of really who they are in order to craft a varied disc, one that has a lot of variety, but also one that feels exceptionally focused and very well managed. And this is a smooth listen where you can easily go from the first track to the very final note and not feel like there's any sort of fluff that's really present. Whenever this was initially reviewed, it was given an 88 out of 100. It was, at that point, one of the highest ranked albums of the year. If I were to re-review it and give it, once again, another score, I would probably only bump it up to about an 89, but traditionally hover it to right around the same location. This is a disc that has a lot of solidarity to it, and is the one that is the narrow victor whenever it comes to this cycle of the Big Four. Now, I'll tell you right out of the gate, the last time this happened, Megadeth was the winner. Rust in Peace happens to be my favorite album of all time, so maybe there's a little bit of bias that's thrown in there. But I want to know what you guys think. Who had the best album out of the Big Four between 2015 and 2016? And out of Persistence of Time, Seasons in the Abyss, Rust in Peace, and Metallica, the Black Album, which is the best out of those 4? Leave both of those answers in the comments below. Either that, or maybe I should make a straw poll. Yeah, I'll do that. There'll be a link for you to follow. Just let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care. Hi guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to find out what I think about Hardwired to Self-Destruct in a full review, scope out the link to your left. If you want to see the For All Kings album review, which won this day, check out the link to your right. You can also subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it if you did that, as well as scope out my Patreon. My name is coverkillernation. Thanks again for viewing, and have a great evening.